One of Rudy's central tenets in the practice, deriving out of this sort of the experience of living in the 1960s, was he said, no, don't do drugs that affect psychic nervous system, meaning LSD, marijuana, hashish, going to ayahuasca, DMT, all of the panoply of possible drugs that begin to play into and awaken very much the system that we're all working in here. He knew that many of the people who came to his class, including me, were people who had in fact discovered all of this through a psychedelic experience, whether it be mushrooms or an actual pill. But something happened in the 60s that was sending shivers and wake-up calls through the population. And I got blasted by an LSD trip. I think all of you know this story, back in the 60s. a pure LSD trip came right out of Sandoz Laboratories and Timothy Leary's group, and Barry Kaplan, who was a dear friend of mine, who was someone who had discovered Leary, and Richard Alpert, who became Baba Ram Dass. That whole universe. And I've elaborated at earlier points that first trip of mine, which was a massive overdose of LSD, primarily because, as coincidence would have it, or the universe would align, the man who provided Mr. Leary, Timothy Leary, with his LSD from Sandoz Laboratories in Switzerland, happened to be on his way to Millbrook to deliver a bottle of it, and he asked my roommate Barry, could he leave it in my refrigerator overnight? Because he didn't want to walk around New York City with a bottle of lysergic acid that would have probably, had it been put into the drinking water, changed the nature of the world as we know it. Anyway, it was sitting in my refrigerator. The long and short of the story is the pill I had been waiting to take for 6 months and had yet to imbibe. When I finally took it, didn't work, and Barry said, well, hell, we got this bottle in the refrigerator. And he goes to give me a drop of this pure lysergic acid, and he goes, oops, and the whole eye drop, so thousands and thousands of micrograms, went down my throat, and I was on a journey that was more than I'm going to talk about now, except that it was a journey into death. It was really terrifying in many ways. It broke through terror ultimately into something completely other, completely unknowable, and yet completely familiar. And at some point, at the end of this multi-billion-year expansion of nothingness, something happened, I don't know what it was, and I started to reform in chunks, like part of a room and an elbow and part of my head and then a body and all this stuff, and I came back into the world, into the room I had been in before this all began, roaring with laughter and saying, why am I back? Why am I back? And this voice came to me as clearly as can be, and it said, to tell people what you saw. That has been the injunction of my entire life from that moment on. I was given a movie career where I could actually write movies that spoke to masses of people about little tiny incremental elements of what I saw, because there seemed to be no easy way to describe the totality of it. And I fulfilled that part of my life. I began to study with Rudy, who started to teach me how to move into those realms without taking a drug. I worked and worked and worked over the course of time and evolved a lot of structure and mechanism internally to handle what you might call higher consciousness, other consciousness. So I'll give you the whole picture again. 44 years later, after meeting Rudy, I had something called an awakening, in which I stopped meditating and decided I wasn't getting anywhere. I just didn't know what to do with the practice, really. I kept waiting for this moment of complete release and liberation and freedom, and it didn't happen. And so I just stopped meditating and said, look, there's not been any diploma here, so I'm done. And 2 weeks later, this thing happened, which I've described many times as a falling away of this guy named Bruce, this survival of something much greater, which had always been there, which is always there. And I thought, I have finished, graduated, awakened, liberated, enlightened. And then over a period of time, I discovered, as I've described here too, that awakening was really like going from kindergarten to first grade. That the journey that we are all on is so massive and so beyond. And I just continued this practice because I said, this is a wonderful practice to build consistency, to build muscle system, the muscle, as Rudy described it, of letting go rather than grasping on. Learning how to let go and let go and let go proved to me to be really essential in the awakening process. And I know that I am meant to continue teaching, and I keep, because I was told on that first morning of awakening, that back in the 60s, tell people what you saw. So following that out, I have more to tell you. About 2 years ago, I was struggling with, it's called diabetic neuropathy, which is enormous amounts of pain in my feet from having diabetes, which I do. And there are no really good medications for it that treat it, almost nothing. And it's really painful, beyond anything I've ever quite known, and it was keeping me up for very long periods of time. And my son had many years ago gave me a joint to smoke. And I said, I can't do that. I am a student of Rudy's, and I vowed never to do it. And it was sitting in a little dresser drawer. And we had a friend who came over to visit who needs marijuana to go to sleep, and so I offered her the joint, and it helped her go to sleep, and what was left I put back in the dresser. And then one night, I just was in such agony. I said, I've got to do this. I said, Rudy, sorry. And I sat down with my joint, and I lit up in bed, and the next thing I know, I am on my psychedelic journey. I had not been on it in 50 years, so it was a long time coming, but it was exactly as I had remembered it. I started going up and up and up and up, and all it said to me was, let go, let go, let go. And so any thought that came into my mind, let go. Everything that started to evolve, it just showed me, use your muscle, let go. I kept letting go, and I kept going higher and higher and higher into a place of such acknowledgement and love, it was indescribable. And it basically said, you've been doing everything right. You married the right woman, it said. You had the right teacher. It was an unbelievable acknowledgement of choices made. And it told me that it gave me the neuropathy because it needed for me to come back up into this particular place and get reaffirmed on some level. So I said, okay. It basically said, the work you're doing is the right work. Continue your practice. Everything is appropriate. It's all as it is, as it should be. And it sent me back with no neuropathy for about a year and a half. It went away. Then it slowly started coming back. That was an extraordinary moment of acknowledgement of everything I have been teaching, doing, studying, working with all of you was affirmed by something much greater. And it's hard to describe how great it is, but it It is a total acknowledgement that we are in something way beyond our mind's ability to grasp. So, as the neuropathy continued, I no longer had a joint, but I had medical marijuana permits, and LA created a world of recreational marijuana, and I was not about to do that. But I, through a friend, came across a woman who made CBD oil that would prove of help to the problem I was having. And she sent me some CBD oil in honey, and it really helped me. I would really take it at night, and the pain would just dissipate. And I was so grateful, because Motrin doesn't work with that stuff, and ibuprofen doesn't work with it. So this was a real help, and I was very grateful. And then I ran out. I wrote her and said, "Do you have any more?" And she said, "Sure, but I don't have the honey version. I have it in coconut oil." I said, "Fine." And she sent it. It's a long story, guys. But let me get to the chase here. Anyway, the other night, Friday night, I was getting into bed, and this neuropathy, this thing hit. And I just thought, I'll take this little bit of coconut oil and I will imbibe it. And approximately 20 minutes in, I realized this was not just CBD oil, but it was laced with, what's it called, THP? THC. A big dose of it. And all of a sudden, I was rising up and out of the world as we know it. And it was coming on so strong. I said, well, there's no chance of sleep going on. And the thing I needed to do was sit up and meditate. And I didn't feel like sitting up and meditate. I was exhausted. I wanted to go to sleep, but it was not giving me a choice. And it came on so strong that I thought, oh my God, I may not survive this one. And I didn't know what to do with it. My pulse was pounding. I could feel something wasn't quite right. I managed somehow to get my a blood pressure thing, to take my blood pressure, and it was almost like 200 over 90 something. And I'm going, this isn't good. And then the voice started saying, we're taking you home. This is it. You're done. And I went, this is a weird night for that. That was not on my agenda to go die tonight. I couldn't find any reasons not to go, basically, other than all the usual. Wife, children, grandchildren, things like that. You guys. But it was really coming, and it said, look, you can die in your bed, or you can die at the hospital. Would you rather go to the hospital and die in the emergency room, or die here? I said, okay, I'll die here. But I also felt I needed to tell Blanche what was happening. So I somehow managed to go to the bathroom. She was in there, and said, honey, this is what's going on. And she's been around me a long time, so she takes a lot of my stuff lightly. And she did not worry. And she was not about to take me to the hospital, I don't think, and I felt that was probably wise. I told her how much I loved her, and have always loved her, and what was happening, and I said, if this is it, know that I am going willingly and openly, and that here we are. And so I went back into the bedroom. I was freezing for some reason, so I was putting on robes and socks and underwear. I don't know what I was doing, just trying to get really warm, and I sat up in bed in meditation position, and I watched this thing happening. And it was somewhat like the journey before, only it was like the unprepared journey. The prepared journey, the night that I actually tried to smoke that marijuana and go up, was like I had offered myself. This was like I was blindsided by it. okay, we're taking you now. That is very different. It's very different than when you prepare and are going. But on the other hand, I immediately started taking breaths, and I had such gratitude for Rudy, for this practice, for this ability to sit still, and I kept bringing myself back in. I opened my heart, I opened my belly, I opened my mind, I opened my brain and ego, and this thing started taking me up higher and higher and higher and higher, and I was like, I don't know how to describe it. Of course, I was going back into the infinite. And then Blanche would be brushing her teeth. And this noise was going, and I was going, and it was like, that's not supposed to be happening in this enormous journey. So I was like, back into this world, and then my mind started going, and like, what am I doing? Why is this? And I really wish I could sleep, and all this stuff was going on, and back up into quietude, and it was going on back and forth like that. At one point, Blanche came into the room, and I had to look. The light was still on, and I had to look at her, and I had to move my head around the room. And every object in the room had become completely alive historically. It had its entire being, from its creation into its present tense, into its future dissolution, all playing at me. So every book on the shelf, every little tiny nothing, all these things were alive, vibrantly alive with vast history, and you could go into any one of them and spend years just in its history. And I had to keep going, nope, nope, nope. And I got quieter and quieter. I told Blanche again that I loved her. And I sat back down, so grateful for this practice, so grateful for the simplicity of being able to get myself back in the midst of what appeared to be a kind of evolving chaos. Every time I got back, I got lifted up higher. Every time I got lifted up higher, it was because I had accepted and surrendered. And then this really interesting voice came to me saying, who is accepting and surrendering for what purpose? And I kept realizing I was accepting and surrendering to achieve peace and comfort. And it kept saying to me, you're still serving yourself. You're still serving this separate self. True surrender is not to get anywhere. True surrender is not to reach for joy and peace and comfort. It's to just accept what is, and in a way, to become the what is. But every time that started to happen, I found this huge drive toward upliftment and joy. But it felt personal, and it was trying to go beyond the personal. And I had trouble trying to go beyond the personal because I did not want to accept darkness and pain and suffering and all the other parts of the human condition. I only wanted the beauty. And it was trying to say, as long as there's a you that only wants the beauty, there's more work to do here. I got a very strong sense of that. And then something happened, because I thought there was this moment where it was either going to be over and I was going to be done. Although it didn't feel like done, it just felt like absorbed into the realm of non-creation, uncreated. And then there's something started to happen, which was a little bit like a choice, saying, if you want, you can go back. If you want, you can go back to life. And I didn't know what to make of that, but I was really on the precipice. And I thought about it, and I kept looking at the massiveness of life and the chaos of existence and the fact that everything had meaning and content and value and so much mindful stuff. And I looked at it all, and then I looked at my wife. She was then at that point in bed near me. And I looked at all of you, I looked at my children, and I said, I choose life. And it said, okay. It made it clear that it was a temporary thing. Life is temporary. But they were letting me come back to be alive, to enjoy what it means to be alive. And what I started to see as I returned to life was what an unbelievable wonder it is. What a miracle it is to be alive. To be manifest, to have been created, to begin to experience the unmanifest, uncreated in tactile, emotionally based form is such a gift. Just to celebrate it, second to second. Just to look at the objects on your shelf and realize, yes, they are objects on a shelf, but they're a little bit like a Disney World. They all come alive and talk and sing and dance, and they all have an existence, and you can appreciate that existence. The amount of appreciation one can bring to the world is so beyond understanding. It also, for some reason, it was very clear to me, it brought in Donald Trump, it brought in the political world, it brought in the struggle, the difficulty, the pain, it brought in global warming. It said, you're coming back to this. Remember, it's this. It's got miracle in it, it's got beauty, it's got joy, it has love, but it also has darkness, it has suffering, it has pain, it has everything. You are coming back into this. But it also said, you're coming back into this with knowledge. One of the most important things is that death can be soft and sweet, if you will, and lying in your own bed. It can also be walking down the street in the middle of New York City and gone. It can be very badly timed. And you don't know. This was, for me, the badly timed death. It wasn't terrible, but it was like, now, really? It just didn't feel like the one meant to happen. But they gave me the choice, come back, be here, do what you will do. I mean, they weren't, one of the really interesting things about this, you should really understand this. Nothing about me in that realm was special. Everything about me in that realm was that I was like another clock or another thing or another whatever. It cared about me deeply, but it cared about everything deeply. It was all richly involved, woven in. And what I really understood is that what I am, if nothing else, is an awareness that gets caught by stuff and frees itself from stuff. And the value that I have in having learned to free myself is that it takes me back to what you might call the witness of stuff. Being the witness is what we are all capable of becoming. Being the stuff, which is what most of us are, is a wildly chaotic state. And getting out of that state without some kind of training, practice, background, determination, massiveness of love, complete understanding, until you arrive at something that will float you up and out of all of this, you are going to be caught in ways that you cannot begin to imagine, because it is so alive, so massive, so dramatic, at the same time as it is so simple, so quiet, so still, and so freeing and liberating. I was so grateful Friday night to have a practice. I was so grateful to be able to sit quietly and go, okay. It did not take care of everything. It was bigger than I had ever remembered it, and it was less personally engaged. I was much more of a number, a thing, than I was a person with a history. But it didn't matter. I was a thing that had learned certain things, and I was able to use them. There was no celebration of having been Bruce, having been a father, a grandfather, a husband, a filmmaker, all that stuff. just not part of the equation. All that was part of the equation was this psychic content that I am, that we are. I came back and I figured my mission of telling people what I saw from 1965 to now is still going on. I'm still telling you what I saw. Whether it makes sense on any level, whether it inspires you to do anything or not, it is a kind of expression of a truth, of a journey that I do not understand at all. I do not understand what this is, why it is, how big it is, how infinite and eternal it is. I only know that it is all of that. It is so beyond any human comprehension, and our only reaction to it is to, in a sense, bow down, become quiet, open-hearted, love the what is, be still, find a practice that allows you to say yes, to allow, to let go, to surrender. Do it regularly so you have a muscle that can do it, and live your life. And if you live your life, love it. Love it. Just love it. Strange experience, strange thing is happening for me. I can't talk about it too much, but a new job has come into my life, a possibility, on a very big level. Not a movie, but something very like it. And I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, so I can't talk about it in any real way. But one of the things it referenced, for me, one of the things I referenced in relationship to it is the play Our Town. And Our Town, which is a wonderful play of Thornton Wilder, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a wonderful play with a stage manager on the stage, no set at all except for chairs and tables and things. And it's about a man talking about life in a place called Grover's Corners, and it's about how he's able to look at this family and watch their journey and talk about them as a kind of omniscient viewer. And he clearly has a sense not only of present tense but future tense, because he talks about the town, and he talks about how that restaurant over there will become a new train station at one point, or he's just able to talk about what's going to happen down the road. And then he introduces you to Emily, the girl, and her boyfriend, and then we see their marriage, and then she dies in childbirth. And she's in the gravesite, and she's allowed at death to revisit life for one day. And she can pick any day she wants. And she picks a birthday, like her 13th birthday. And she comes back into the world to witness her 13th birthday. And we get to witness it with her. And everything about that, from the side of death, everything about it has such beauty and wonder. And in one of the last productions of it in New York City, they did something which I wish I had seen. Joshua saw it. But I just love the idea. When she goes back to visit her home as a 13-year-old and revisit the day of her birthday, they on the stage they actually had the mother making bacon and eggs, and it was just the cooking. All the smells were going out into the auditorium, so everyone in the room was sobbing, with familiarity. But what really comes through Emily's return to that day is how precious life is, how beautiful life is, how joyous life is, and how much we don't see it when we're there, and how her seeing it for that one day allowed her to go back to the grave with a sense of the completion of having been alive. Well, I came back from this journey the other night with that feeling. I'm grateful to be alive. I know it's a crazy place, and I know it's got drama, and I know it's got all sorts of stuff I would rather would go away. But I have my wife, I have Blanche. I have my kids, Josh and Ari. I have my grandchildren, Talia and Elijah. And I have all of you. You may not know how much you fit into that picture, but you all fit into that picture in a very real way. And I intend to express my love and my gratitude to all of you as long as I'm around, and if I can convey any sense of the value of your doing the same to the people around you, let me convey that, because This is an extraordinary, strange, unexplainable ride that we're on. I do not understand it. It could be awful, and it could be some terrible trick. I don't know. I cannot tell you. It's big. It's massive. But it does have somewhere in it this core thing, which we talk about all the time, love. And it has something we call beauty and something we call truth. And those things resonate and are really important. And on this journey, they're the one thing that goes with you. Your sense of love, your sense of beauty, and the truth. The truth may haunt you because it shows you how untruthful you normally are. It really shows all the lies very quickly, but then you have to go back to truth. If you can find truth now in your day-to-day life, that will be of help. If you can find love now, that will be of help. Beauty, if you can find beauty now and recall it at all, appreciate it in the moment, that will help. Those are the things we're being called upon to do, and let go of everything else. Let go. Let go of your unfinished business, let go of your fears, let go of your drama, let go of the world, let go of your attachments, let go of what was or could have been and might have been and should have been. And you really have to do that. You really have to do it. Because if you don't do it, it grabs you like that. And you're back in that space, and it is reverberating with a kind of intensity that is nothing like what it is in day-to-day life. It's way beyond. It's really, really intense, and you won't like it. And if you don't figure out how to break through that and free yourself of it, you're caught in it until you get, I suspect, reborn with all of that drama and tension into another opportunity to work through it. I'm not certain that's the trajectory. I'm not 100% sure, but it feels like it. So I share this story with you, not to encourage anybody to go out and start getting CBD oil with THC, and not trying to get you to turn on or do drugs or anything like that. I'm trying to tell you this story because it's what's happening. It has some value. The true value to me is life and death are unpredictable. Death is unexpected. The readiness for that is not something you should wait to prepare for when you're in your 70s and 80s. The muscle system involved in letting go and opening and freeing yourself is an important muscle system, and if you don't develop it young, it falls away. So you've got to work it your whole life, just like these muscles that start to go away when you get older. You have to take charge of your life, of your environment, and how you work this system. And if you don't do it, you're going to be flotsam and jetsam in a bizarre unfolding you are not going to be prepared for. And trust me, when this thing comes in, as I said many times in other talks, when this thing comes at you, it's like, oh, that again, or oh, this again, because it's not obscure. You've been on this ride many times, and it's coming back, and it's about to take you back out, and either you're going to be gentle and open and available, or you will be cowering in the darkness of your own fear. So keep a practice alive, guys. Keep your work going. It's meaningful, it's important, and life is as many people will tell us, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's taking all of that stuff that cannot be put together, and it puts it together. All of these strange forces and all of these alignments and all of these materialized forces, it puts them together. It creates food, it creates air and breathing, it creates water to swim in, it creates work and things to do to keep it all going. It is an amazing creation, an amazing creation. Is it perfect? Probably. But is it perfect for us? Probably not. But it is perfect in its own design, I think. And if we can figure out how to align ourselves with that perfection, we might walk away saying, yes, it's perfect as it is. So that's my story. I knew in telling it that I may be risking losing people who listen to my talks. I am totally willing to lose anybody who doesn't want to hear what I have to say. You don't have to tune this in. You don't have to come on board. If this doesn't speak to your idea of how it should be or the way you think it is, find somebody who tells you the way you like it. This is how it is for me, and it is part of an extraordinary journey, adventure, ride into the infinite and the unknown, with little glimpses of something along the way that can help inform all of us, perhaps. Thank you for sharing or listening to the sharing. And any questions? Yeah, I know. What's to say? Oh, boy. So, okay. We will be here next week, for those of you who decide you want to come back. And the next 2 weeks after that, we're in Oakland for the third weekend of this month, and in Pasadena for the last weekend. And then we'll be back here in March, ongoing. Thank you for coming today. Truly appreciate it. And onward.